I spent weeks planning the perfect party for my daughter, but my mother's words cut deeper than any knife, until one text message silenced her completely. "Hi, I'm Renee, and I just turned 34 last spring. I live in a quiet neighborhood outside Columbus, Ohio, in a house with a small backyard and a kitchen that always smells like coffee. My husband Mark works in logistics, and our daughter Lily is 7 years old with curly hair and a laugh that fills every room. My life is simple, ordinary even, but I have learned that ordinary can still hold deep wounds. My mother, Barbara, has always been a difficult woman to please. Growing up, I watched her eyes light up whenever my older sister Angela walked into the room. Angela was graceful, ambitious, and never seemed to make mistakes. I was the opposite, clumsy, uncertain, always one step behind. My mother never said she loved Angela more, but she didn't have to. Her silence when I succeeded and her attention when Angela breathed told me everything I needed to know. When Lily started talking about her birthday party in January, I felt a spark of determination. She wanted a rainbow unicorn theme, something bright and magical and completely her own. I promised her it would be the best party she ever had. Every night after she went to sleep, I scrolled through Pinterest and made lists. I wanted this party to be perfect, not just for Lily, but maybe to prove something to myself, something I couldn't quite name yet. I ordered decorations online, pastel streamers, unicorn plates, holographic tablecloths that shimmered in the light. I spent hours watching YouTube tutorials on how to make balloon animals and how to frost cupcakes to look like little rainbows. Mark watched me from the doorway one evening and asked if I was okay. I told him I just wanted Lily to feel special. He nodded, but I could tell he sensed something deeper beneath my obsession. The week before the party, I sent my mother a photo of the backyard setup in progress. I wanted her approval, even though I knew better than to expect it. She replied with a single word. That sound. I knew it from childhood. It meant she was unimpressed but saving her full critique for later. I stared at my phone for 10 minutes, feeling that familiar knot forming in my chest. Why did I keep hoping for something she couldn't give? The morning of the party, I woke before dawn. The house was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and my own anxious heartbeat. I tiptoed to the kitchen and began arranging cupcakes on tiered stands. Each one had been frosted by hand the night before, and they looked beautiful to me. I imagined Lily's face when she saw them, and that image gave me the strength to keep going despite the exhaustion settling into my bones. Mark joined me around 6, still half asleep but willing to help. Together, we hung streamers from the fence and set up the folding tables we had borrowed from our neighbor. The backyard slowly transformed into a pastel wonderland, and for a moment, I allowed myself to feel proud. This was something I had created with my own hands, my own love. I took photos from every angle, saving them like evidence of my effort. Lily woke up at 8 and ran outside in her pajamas. Her scream of joy echoed through the neighborhood, and I felt tears prick my eyes. She hugged me so tight I could barely breathe, whispering that it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. In that moment, nothing else mattered. Not my mother's opinions, not Angela's perfect life, not the years of feeling inadequate. My daughter's happiness was the only validation I truly needed. My mother arrived an hour before the guests. She stepped out of her car slowly, adjusting her sunglasses and scanning the yard with a critical eye. I watched her from the kitchen window, my stomach already tightening. She walked through the gate and paused at the welcome sign I had painted myself. Her lips pressed together in that familiar thin line. I took a deep breath and went outside to greet her with a smile I didn't fully feel. She touched the tablecloth and rubbed the fabric between her fingers. She examined the cupcakes without tasting one, tilting her head as if inspecting a crime scene. I stood nearby, waiting for her verdict, like a child awaiting a grade. Finally, she turned to me and said the decorations looked cheap, like something from a dollar store. I reminded her I had made everything myself, but she just shrugged and asked where the real food was. The guests began arriving, and I forced myself to shift focus. Children ran through the backyard squealing with delight, and parents complimented the setup with genuine warmth. Lily was radiant, laughing and playing, and completely unaware of the storm brewing inside me. I smiled and chatted and refilled juice cups, all while feeling my mother's gaze following me like a shadow. Every compliment from another parent felt like a tiny rebellion against her silence. During the piñata, I caught my mother whispering something to another guest's grandmother. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the other woman glance at the decorations and nod politely. My face burned with humiliation. I didn't know what my mother had said, but I could imagine. Something dismissive, something that minimized my effort. I turned away and focused on Lily, who was swinging at the unicorn with pure joy. After the last guest left, the backyard looked like a beautiful disaster. Streamers hung limply, cake crumbs dotted the grass, and empty juice boxes littered the tables. I didn't mind the mess. I was exhausted but satisfied, holding on to Lily's happiness like a fragile treasure. Then my mother appeared beside me at the kitchen sink, and I knew the conversation I had been dreading was about to begin. I braced myself automatically. She told me I had wasted money on foolishness. She said real parties didn't need so many colors or homemade disasters. She mentioned Angela's children's parties, how elegant they always were, how Angela hired professionals who knew what they were doing. Her words landed like small stones, each one adding to a pile I had been carrying for decades. I kept washing dishes, my hands trembling slightly beneath the warm water. I wanted to defend myself, but the words caught in my throat. I had learned long ago that arguing with my mother was pointless. She had already decided who I was, the lesser daughter, the one who tried too hard and still fell short. So I nodded and let her talk, feeling smaller with every sentence. When she finally left, I stood alone in the kitchen and felt the weight of 34 years pressing down on my shoulders. That night, I couldn't sleep. Mark tried to comfort me, telling me the party was wonderful and that Lily had called it the best day ever. I wanted to believe him, but my mother's voice was louder in my head. I lay in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, wondering why I still craved her approval after all these years. Some wounds, it seems, never fully heal. They just learn to hide beneath the surface. The next morning, I woke to a notification on my phone. It was a text message from an unknown number, long and detailed. At first, I assumed it was spam or a wrong number. But as I read the opening lines, my heart began to race. The sender introduced herself as Patricia, a woman who had worked as Angela's housekeeper for 3 years. She said she had something important to share with me, something she couldn't keep silent any longer. I sat up in bed and read the entire message twice. Patricia described a household very different from the one my mother always praised. She wrote about Angela yelling at her children for minor mistakes, about staged photos and private coldness. She mentioned Angela's husband working late just to avoid being home. Each detail felt specific and heavy, like puzzle pieces I never knew were missing. My hands were shaking by the time I finished reading. Part of me wanted to dismiss the message immediately. It could be lies, jealousy, or some misunderstanding, but the details were too precise, too aligned with small things I had noticed over the years. Angela's children's nervous glances, their rehearsed smiles at family gatherings. I thought about all the times my mother had held Angela up as the golden standard. I wondered if she had ever looked beneath the shiny surface. I sat with the message for the rest of the morning, unsure what to do with it. This information could change everything, or it could change nothing at all. I didn't want to hurt Angela, but I also couldn't ignore the truth that had been handed to me. For the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me, a quiet loosening of the chains I had worn for so long. Maybe perfection wasn't what I thought it was. For 3 days, I carried Patricia's message like a secret stone in my pocket. I reread it at night when Mark was asleep, parsing every sentence for truth or exaggeration. I searched for Patricia online but found nothing definitive, just a common name attached to dozens of strangers. Part of me wanted to call Angela directly and ask her if any of it was real, but I knew my sister would deny everything, and I would be left looking jealous and petty. I watched Lily play in the backyard one afternoon, her laughter rising like music into the spring air. She was building a fairy house out of sticks and leaves, completely absorbed in her imagination. I thought about Angela's children, how they always seemed so polished and quiet at family gatherings. I had assumed they were just well-behaved, but now I wondered if their silence was something else entirely. The thought made my chest ache in unexpected ways. Mark noticed something was wrong. He asked me several times if I was feeling okay, and I kept telling him I was just tired from the party. But one evening, after Lily was in bed, he sat beside me on the couch and waited. He didn't push or demand answers. He just sat there, patient and steady, until I finally handed him my phone. I watched his face as he read Patricia's message from beginning to end. He was quiet for a long moment after finishing. Then he looked at me and asked what I wanted to do with this information. I admitted I didn't know. Part of me wanted to confront my mother, to show her that her golden child wasn't so golden after all. But another part felt guilty for even considering it. Angela was still my sister, flawed or not, and exposing her felt like a betrayal I wasn't sure I could live with. Mark suggested I think about my true motivation. Was I trying to help Angela's children, or was I trying to win a lifelong competition with my sister? The question stung because I couldn't answer it honestly. Maybe it was both. Maybe I wanted justice and validation wrapped together in one neat package. I thanked him for his honesty and spent another sleepless night wrestling with my own tangled emotions beneath the quiet ceiling. My mother called that weekend to tell me about Angela's upcoming dinner party. She described the caterer Angela had hired, the imported wine she had ordered, the guest list filled with impressive names. I listened quietly, making small sounds of acknowledgement while my mind wandered elsewhere. I wondered if my mother had ever asked Angela how she was really doing, or if she only saw what Angela wanted her to see. The performance was so convincing, I decided I needed more information before making any decisions. I replied to Patricia's message, thanking her for reaching out and asking if she would be willing to talk on the phone. She responded within an hour, agreeing to a call the following evening. My heart raced as I saved the appointment in my calendar. This was no longer just a text message. It was becoming something real, something I couldn't easily put back in a box. The phone call lasted 45 minutes. Patricia's voice was calm and measured, carrying the weight of someone who had witnessed difficult things. She told me stories I hadn't read in her message, moments of coldness between Angela and her husband, times when the children cried quietly in their rooms. She said she had quit because she couldn't bear watching anymore. I thanked her and hung up, feeling heavier than before, uncertain what to do next. That night, I dreamed about Angela and me as children. We were playing in our grandmother's backyard, catching fireflies in mason jars. In the dream, Angela was laughing. Really laughing, not the polished chuckle she uses now. I woke up with tears on my cheeks, mourning a version of my sister I barely remembered. Somewhere along the way, she had become someone I didn't recognize. Or maybe I had never really known her at all. I made my decision on a Tuesday morning. I would show my mother the message, not to destroy Angela, but to challenge the narrative that had shaped our family for decades. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. I wanted my mother to see that her endless comparisons had been built on a foundation of illusions. Maybe then, she could finally see me for who I really was. Maybe then we could start over. I invited my mother over for Saturday afternoon. I told her I wanted to discuss something important, something that couldn't wait. She sounded surprised but agreed without pressing for details. The days leading up to her visit felt endless. I rehearsed what I would say, imagining her reactions, preparing myself for anger or denial or silence. None of my mental rehearsals felt quite right. The truth is, I had no idea how she would respond. Saturday arrived gray and cool, with clouds threatening rain that never came. My mother pulled into the driveway at exactly 2 o'clock, punctual as always. I watched her walk to the front door, her posture straight and confident. She had no idea what was waiting for her inside. I opened the door with a smile and invited her in, offering tea and small talk while my heart pounded against my ribs like a trapped bird. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she had criticized my party just weeks before. I wrapped my hands around my mug for warmth and steadiness. She asked what was so important, her eyes scanning my face for clues. I took a deep breath and told her I had received a message from someone who used to work for Angela. Her expression shifted immediately, curiosity mixing with something that looked almost like fear beneath her careful composure. I pulled out my phone and began reading the message aloud. My voice trembled at first, but steadied as I continued. I watched my mother's face move through confusion, disbelief, and something softer I couldn't name. When I finished, the kitchen was completely silent. Even the refrigerator seemed to hold its breath. She stared at the table for a long moment, her fingers tracing invisible patterns on the wooden surface between us. Finally, she asked if I believed it. I told her I didn't know for certain, but that I had spoken with Patricia on the phone, and her stories felt true. I watched my mother's shoulders drop slightly, as if a string holding her upright had been cut. She admitted quietly that she had noticed things over the years, Angela's children flinching at sudden sounds, their rehearsed answers to simple questions, but she had chosen not to see because seeing meant everything she believed was wrong. Her confession hung in the air between us. I had expected denial or anger, but instead, I received something unexpected. Honesty. She told me she had built her identity around Angela's success, using it as proof that she had been a good mother. Admitting Angela was struggling meant admitting she had failed somehow. It was easier to criticize me, the daughter who never hid her imperfections, than to examine the daughter who hid everything behind a perfect mask. Tears began sliding down her cheeks, and I realized I had never seen my mother cry before. Not at funerals, not at weddings, not during any of life's big moments. She had always been composed, controlled, untouchable. But sitting at my kitchen table, she looked smaller and more human than I had ever seen her. I didn't know whether to comfort her or keep my distance. The moment felt fragile enough to shatter. I reached across the table and took her hand. It felt strange at first, this physical closeness we had never shared. But she didn't pull away. Instead, she squeezed my fingers and apologized. Really apologized for the years of criticism and comparison. She said she had been so focused on appearances that she forgot to look at what was real. She told me she was proud of the mother I had become, words I had waited 34 years to hear. We sat together for another hour, talking more openly than we ever had. She asked about Lily's school and my work, genuinely curious rather than searching for flaws. She admitted she didn't know how to fix her relationship with Angela, or even if it could be fixed. But she wanted to try being different with me. It wasn't a perfect resolution. Decades of hurt couldn't dissolve in a single afternoon. But it was a beginning, tender and uncertain. When she left that evening, she hugged me at the door. It was awkward and brief, but it was real. I watched her drive away and felt something release inside my chest. A tension I had carried so long I forgot it was there. The sky had cleared, and the setting sun painted everything in shades of gold. I stood on my porch, breathing deeply, and allowed myself to believe that change, however slow, was finally possible for us. The weeks following my mother's visit felt different, like walking through a familiar house where someone had rearranged all the furniture. Nothing dramatic had changed, yet everything felt shifted. My mother called more often now, her voice softer on the phone, her questions genuine rather than probing for flaws. She asked about Lily's art projects and Mark's work, listening without comparing or correcting. Each conversation felt like a small step across a bridge we were building together. I thought about Angela constantly, wondering if I should reach out to her. Patricia's words echoed in my mind during quiet moments. The image of my sister yelling behind closed doors, her children crying in their rooms. Part of me wanted to call Angela and ask if she was okay, to offer help without judgment. But another part feared her reaction. Angela had spent her whole life constructing a perfect image. She wouldn't welcome someone trying to peek behind the curtain. One evening, I found myself scrolling through Angela's social media. Her latest post showed her family at a charity gala, everyone dressed impeccably, smiles perfectly arranged. The caption mentioned gratitude and blessings, hashtags about family and love. I studied her children's faces, searching for signs of the distress Patricia had described. They looked fine, happy even. But I had learned that photographs lie beautifully. They capture a single second and pretend it's the whole story. Lily noticed I was distracted and crawled into my lap one afternoon. She asked why I seemed sad, her small hand patting my cheek with concern. I told her I was just thinking about grown-up things. Nothing she needed to worry about. She nodded seriously and told me that when she felt sad, she drew pictures of rainbows. Then she handed me a crayon and a piece of paper, waiting expectantly. I smiled and drew the worst rainbow she had ever seen. My mother came to visit again 3 weeks later, this time without an invitation. She arrived with a box of pastries from my favorite bakery and a nervous smile I had never seen before. She said she wanted to help me plant flowers in the backyard, something we had never done together. I handed her gardening gloves and watched her kneel in the dirt beside me, her manicured nails disappearing into the soil without complaint. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, digging holes and placing seedlings with careful hands. Then she told me she had called Angela the day before. My hands froze mid-motion, dirt clinging to my fingers. She said she had asked Angela how she was really doing. Not the polished answer, but the truth. Angela had been silent for a long moment, then said, "Everything was fine," but my mother heard the crack in her voice, the hesitation that said otherwise. She didn't push Angela further during that call. She said she wanted to give her daughter space to come to her when she was ready. I understood that approach, even if part of me wanted faster resolution. Some people need time to lower their defenses, to trust that honesty won't be used against them. Angela had spent decades performing perfection. She couldn't simply drop the mask because someone asked nicely. The walls were too high. That night, I wrote Angela a letter by hand. I didn't mention Patricia or the message or anything that might feel like an accusation. Instead, I wrote about our childhood, about catching fireflies and sharing secrets under blankets. I told her I missed the sister I used to know, the one who laughed freely and didn't worry about being perfect. I said I was here if she ever needed someone to talk to. No judgment attached. Then I sealed the envelope. I mailed the letter the next morning, watching it disappear into the blue mailbox like a wish thrown into a well. I had no expectations for a response. Angela might ignore it, or she might be angry that I had reached out at all. But I needed to extend the invitation, to leave a door open even if she never walked through it. That was all I could control. My own actions, my own willingness to reconnect. The rest was up to her. 2 weeks passed without any word from Angela. I checked the mailbox daily, hoping for something, but found only bills and advertisements. I told myself it was fine, that I had done what I could. Mark reminded me that healing doesn't follow timelines, that some people need years to process what others handle in weeks. His patience steadied me during moments when I felt like giving up hope. He was my anchor in uncertain waters. Lily's school held a spring concert, and my mother drove 2 hours to attend. She sat beside me in the auditorium, clutching a bouquet of daisies for her granddaughter. When Lily walked onto the stage with her classmates, my mother grabbed my hand and squeezed. I looked at her profile in the dim light, seeing pride and love I had craved for so long. It was such a small gesture, but it filled something hollow inside me. After the concert, my mother took us out for ice cream. Lily talked nonstop about her performance, her friends, her teacher who wore funny socks. My mother listened with genuine attention, laughing at the right moments, asking follow-up questions that showed she cared. I sat across from them, eating my strawberry sundae, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the weather. This was what family was supposed to feel like. The letter from Angela arrived on a Thursday, exactly 1 month after I had sent mine. I recognized her handwriting on the envelope, elegant loops and precise spacing, just like everything she did. My hands trembled as I opened it, unsure what I would find inside. The letter was short, only 1 page, but each word carried weight I could feel pressing against my chest as I read slowly. She thanked me for reaching out and admitted she had cried when she read my letter. She said her life wasn't as perfect as it appeared, that she had been struggling for years to maintain an image that was crushing her. She wrote that she wasn't ready to talk about details yet, but knowing I was there meant more than I could understand. She signed it simply, "Your sister, Angela." Those 2 words unlocked something inside me. I showed the letter to my mother during her next visit. She read it slowly, her eyes growing wet as she reached the end. She said she had failed both of her daughters, one by criticizing too harshly, the other by praising too blindly. Neither of us had been seen for who we really were. I told her it wasn't too late to change, that we were all still here, still capable of building something new from broken pieces. Summer arrived with its long days and warm evenings, and our backyard became a gathering place. My mother visited almost every weekend now, helping Lily catch fireflies and teaching her to bake cookies from scratch. Mark joked that he had gained a mother-in-law he actually enjoyed spending time with. I watched them together, these people I loved, and felt gratitude spreading through me like sunlight warming cold bones after a long winter. Angela called me for the first time in September. Her voice sounded different, quieter, less polished, more real. She told me she had started seeing a therapist and was working on being honest about her struggles. She wasn't ready for family gatherings yet, but she wanted me to know she was trying. I told her I was proud of her, and I meant it. Courage isn't about being perfect. It's about choosing truth when lies would be easier. Lily turned 8 that October, and we threw another backyard party. This time, my mother helped with everything: hanging streamers, frosting cupcakes, even making balloon animals that looked vaguely like dogs if you squinted. The decorations weren't elegant or expensive. They were colorful and messy and full of love. When Lily blew out her candles, surrounded by people who saw her truly, I knew this was exactly what I had always wanted for her. Looking back now, I understand that Patricia's message was never really about Angela. It was about breaking the spell of comparison that had held our family captive for decades. It forced us to confront uncomfortable truths: that perfection is a prison, that appearances deceive, that love shouldn't come with conditions attached. We are all still learning, still stumbling, still finding our way towards something healthier. But at least now, we are walking together. I am not the daughter my mother always wanted, and maybe I never will be, but I am the daughter she has, the one who stayed even when staying was hard. I am a mother who throws imperfect parties and loves fiercely without apology. I am a sister reaching across years of silence toward connection. I am Renee, 35 now, finally comfortable in my own flawed and beautiful skin, and that, I have learned, is more than enough. The holidays approached with their familiar mixture of anticipation and anxiety. For years, Christmas had meant performing happiness at Angela's immaculate house, feeling small beneath her crystal chandeliers and perfectly coordinated decorations. But this year felt different. My mother suggested we host Christmas at my house instead, saying she wanted something cozy rather than formal. I agreed before she could change her mind, already imagining Lily's excitement at having Grandma stay overnight for the first time. I spent the first week of December decorating with wild abandon. Lily helped me string lights around the porch while Mark untangled ornaments from boxes we had stored in the garage. Nothing matched perfectly. We had collected decorations over years from dollar stores and craft fairs and Lily's school projects. The tree looked chaotic and wonderful, exactly like our family. I stepped back to admire it and felt pride instead of the usual inadequacy that haunted holiday preparations. My mother arrived 3 days before Christmas, her car packed with gifts and grocery bags. She had offered to help cook the dinner, a gesture that surprised me more than anything else that year. We had never cooked together before, not even during my childhood. The kitchen had always been her domain, a place where I wasn't skilled enough to contribute. But now she handed me a peeler and asked me to help with the potatoes. We worked side by side, chopping vegetables and seasoning the turkey, talking about nothing in particular. She told me stories about her own mother, my grandmother who had died when I was young. She described holiday traditions I had never heard about, recipes passed down through generations that she had almost forgotten. I listened hungrily, realizing how little I actually knew about my mother's life before she became my mother. She had been a whole person with dreams and disappointments. On Christmas Eve, Angela called. I nearly dropped my phone when I saw her name on the screen, my heart immediately racing with uncertainty. She said she wanted to wish us happy holidays and to thank my mother for the card she had sent. Her voice still carried that careful politeness. But beneath it, I heard something warmer trying to break through. She asked about Lily, and I told her about the cookies we were baking together. The conversation lasted only 10 minutes, but it felt like a beginning. Angela mentioned she might visit in the spring, if that was okay with everyone. I told her she was always welcome, that our door was open whenever she was ready to walk through it. After we hung up, my mother looked at me with tears in her eyes. She said she had prayed for this moment, for her daughters to find their way back to each other after so many years apart. Christmas morning arrived with Lily bouncing on our bed at 6 o'clock, too excited to sleep any longer. We stumbled downstairs in our pajamas, and I made coffee while my mother helped Lily sort presents into piles. Mark captured everything on video, saying he wanted to remember this year especially. I understood what he meant without asking. This Christmas felt like the first page of a new chapter, one where our family was finally choosing each other over old wounds. Lily opened her gifts with delighted screams, hugging each person after every present. When she reached the gift from my mother, a handmade quilt stitched with fabric from my own childhood dresses, she grew quiet. She ran her fingers over the patches, recognizing the patterns from old photographs. My mother explained that she had been saving those scraps for years, waiting for the right moment. Lily wrapped the quilt around her shoulders and declared it her most treasured possession. The dinner that evening was imperfect in the best ways. I slightly burned the rolls, and the gravy had lumps no amount of whisking could fix. But nobody complained. We laughed about the lumps and soaked the rolls in butter until they tasted fine. My mother told jokes I had never heard before, and Mark did impressions of holiday movie characters that made Lily nearly choke on her mashed potatoes. The table was loud and messy and full of genuine joy. After Lily went to bed, the three of us sat by the fire with glasses of wine. My mother stared into the flames for a long while before speaking. She told me she had wasted so many years chasing something that didn't exist. A perfect family, a perfect life, a perfect reflection of her own worth. She said watching me raise Lily with such love and acceptance had taught her what really mattered. Hearing those words from her felt like medicine finally reaching a wound. January arrived cold and quiet, the excitement of holidays fading into ordinary routines. But ordinary felt different now, comfortable instead of disappointing. My mother called every Sunday evening for long conversations about nothing important. We discussed television shows and recipes and Lily's latest drawings. These calls weren't dramatic or deep, but they built something steady between us. Trust grows in small moments, I was learning, not just in grand revelations. I started keeping a journal that winter, writing down thoughts I couldn't speak aloud. I wrote about the years of feeling invisible, the hunger for approval that had shaped so many of my choices. I wrote about forgiving my mother, not because she deserved it, but because carrying resentment had grown too heavy. I wrote about hoping Angela would heal, even if I never witnessed it firsthand. The pages filled slowly with honesty I had hidden from everyone, including myself. Spring came early that year, coaxing flowers from the ground before March ended. I was planting tulip bulbs when my phone buzzed with a text from Angela. She said she was driving through Ohio next weekend and asked if she could stop by for a few hours. My hands were covered in dirt, but I typed back immediately, telling her yes, absolutely yes. Then I sat in the garden for a long time, feeling hope and fear tangled together in my chest. The day Angela arrived, I cleaned the house 3 times, despite knowing she wouldn't judge. Old habits die slowly, especially the ones rooted in childhood. When her car pulled into the driveway, I watched from the window, noticing how thin she looked, how her movements seemed less certain than I remembered. She stepped out and stood for a moment, looking at our modest house with an expression I couldn't read. Then she walked toward the door. I opened it before she could knock, and we stood facing each other for an awkward moment. She looked tired but softer, the sharp edges I remembered seeming worn down by something I couldn't name. I invited her inside and offered coffee, falling into hostess mode to cover my nervousness. She accepted and followed me to the kitchen, her eyes moving over family photos and Lily's artwork taped to the refrigerator. She smiled at a drawing of a rainbow unicorn. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where so much had already happened, and talked carefully at first. She asked about Lily and Mark, about my job and the house. I answered and asked questions in return, learning that she had reduced her work hours and started taking pottery classes. Pottery, she said, gave her permission to make imperfect things. I understood exactly what she meant without needing further explanation. Imperfection was freedom. Eventually, the conversation deepened. Angela admitted that Patricia's departure had been a wake-up call she initially ignored. She confessed that her marriage had nearly ended last year, that she had been harsh with her children in ways she now regretted deeply. Her voice cracked as she spoke, and I reached across the table to hold her hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, she held on tightly, like someone afraid of drowning. She stayed for dinner that evening, meeting Mark properly for the first time in years. Lily showed her every toy and book in her room, chattering endlessly while Angela listened with patience I hadn't expected. Watching my sister sit on Lily's floor, admiring crayon drawings with genuine interest, I glimpsed the person she might have been without the pressure she had placed upon herself. That person was still there, buried but breathing, slowly finding her way back. When Angela left that night, she hugged me at the door. Really hugged me. Not the stiff embrace we had exchanged at family gatherings for years. She thanked me for the letter I had written months ago, saying she had read it dozens of times when she needed courage. I told her I loved her, words I hadn't spoken to my sister since we were children. She said she loved me too, and I believed her completely. Driving away, her taillights disappeared around the corner, and I stood on the porch feeling something settle inside me. The story wasn't over. Angela still had work to do, and our family was still learning how to be honest with each other. But we had started. We had chosen to try. And sometimes choosing to try is the bravest thing a family can do together. I went inside to find Mark and Lily waiting. My home warm and imperfect, and exactly where I needed to be. The months that followed Angela's visit unfolded gently, like petals opening in slow motion. We texted regularly now, sharing small moments from our daily lives, photos of meals we cooked, funny things our children said, quiet observations about the weather. These messages weren't profound, but they built a bridge between us, plank by plank. I saved every conversation, scrolling through them sometimes at night, marveling at how much had changed since that birthday party that started everything. Summer arrived with its long golden evenings, and my mother proposed something unexpected. She wanted to host a family gathering at her house, something simple with just the people who mattered most. Angela agreed to come with her husband and children, their first extended family event in over 2 years. I felt nervous and excited in equal measure, unsure what to expect, but willing to hope. Hope had become easier for me lately. The drive to my mother's house took 3 hours, Lily singing along to the radio while Mark navigated traffic. I watched the familiar landscape pass outside my window, cornfields and small towns and billboards advertising things nobody needed. This route held so many memories, most of them complicated. But today felt different. Today I wasn't driving toward judgment or comparison. I was driving toward family, imperfect and trying, just like me. My mother greeted us at the door with an apron dusted in flour. She had been baking all morning, she explained, wanting everything to be special. Her house looked different than I remembered, less formal, more lived in, with family photos covering surfaces that used to hold expensive decorations. I noticed a framed picture of Lily's rainbow unicorn drawing on the mantel, displayed as proudly as any piece of fine art. The sight made my throat tighten unexpectedly. Angela arrived an hour later with her family. I watched her children tumble out of the car, looking more relaxed than I had ever seen them. Her daughter ran straight to Lily, and within minutes, they were giggling together like old friends. Angela's son asked Mark about video games, initiating conversation without the rehearsed politeness I remembered. Something had shifted in that household. Something I could see in their easier movements and brighter eyes. Angela and I found ourselves alone in the kitchen, washing dishes while the others played outside. She told me her therapist had helped her understand why she had pushed so hard for perfection, a desperate attempt to earn love she already had. She said learning to fail gracefully was the hardest thing she had ever done, harder than any achievement she had chased. I told her I understood, that I had spent years trying to succeed at being someone I was never meant to be. We laughed about our childhood, remembering moments I had forgotten. The time we built a fort from couch cushions and refused to come out for dinner. The summer we tried to start a detective agency and solved exactly 0 mysteries. These memories felt precious now, evidence that we had once been close before life and expectations pulled us apart. I wanted to build new memories like these, ones our children could carry forward someday. My mother joined us in the kitchen, and for a moment, the 3 of us stood together without speaking. The weight of years hung between us. The criticisms, the comparisons, the silent wounds we had inflicted and endured. But beneath that weight, I felt something stronger. We were still here, still standing, still choosing to be in this kitchen together. That choice meant everything. It was the foundation upon which healing could be built. Dinner that evening was loud and chaotic in the best way. Children interrupted conversations, food got spilled, and nobody minded at all. My mother laughed more than I had ever heard, her face softer and more open than the careful mask she used to wear. Angela's husband told stories that made everyone giggle, and I realized I had misjudged him for years based on almost nothing. Assumptions are dangerous that way. They build walls where doors should be. After the children were put to bed in makeshift sleeping arrangements, the adults gathered on the back porch. The night was warm and thick with fireflies, their lights blinking messages we couldn't decode. My mother opened a bottle of wine she had been saving for a special occasion. She poured glasses for everyone and raised hers in a toast. She said she was grateful for second chances, for daughters who forgave her, for the family she almost lost, but didn't. Angela spoke next, her voice trembling slightly in the darkness. She apologized for the years of distance, for caring more about appearances than connection. She said she had been so afraid of being seen as flawed that she had hidden from the people who loved her most. She thanked me for the letter that had cracked her armor, for being brave enough to reach out when she couldn't reach back. I felt tears sliding down my cheeks. When it was my turn, I struggled to find the right words. I said that I had spent most of my life feeling invisible, measuring myself against standards I could never meet. But that birthday party, the one my mother had criticized so harshly, had become a turning point I never expected. It led to Patricia's message, which led to conversations that changed everything. Sometimes our lowest moments contain seeds of transformation we cannot see until much later. I told them about keeping a journal, about writing down my feelings to understand them better. I shared that I had started seeing a counselor too, working through childhood wounds I had ignored for decades. Growth isn't just for people who are broken, I explained. It's for anyone brave enough to look honestly at themselves and choose to evolve. My mother reached over and squeezed my hand, saying she was proud of me. Those words still hadn't lost their power. The weekend passed too quickly, filled with board games and shared meals and conversations that deepened with each passing hour. Lily and her cousins became inseparable, creating imaginary worlds in my mother's backyard. I watched Angela play with them, her laughter genuine and free, her children responding to her with affection rather than anxiety. The transformation wasn't complete, healing never is, but the direction was unmistakably toward something healthier and more whole. On the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, clutching a stuffed animal Angela's daughter had given her. Mark held my hand across the console, not speaking but communicating everything through that simple touch. I thought about how far we had come, not just the miles on the highway, but the emotional distance we had traveled as a family. A year ago, this weekend would have seemed impossible. Now, it was simply the beginning of what came next. Fall arrived with its familiar rhythms, school starting, leaves changing, the world preparing for another cycle of endings and beginnings. Angela called regularly now, our conversations flowing easily without the old tension underneath. She and her husband had started couples therapy, she told me, and things were improving slowly but steadily. Her children were thriving, finally allowed to be imperfect, finally free from expectations no child should carry alone. My mother visited for Lily's school play in October, sitting in the front row with her phone recording every moment. Afterward, she took us all out for ice cream and asked Lily questions about her performance with genuine curiosity and delight. Watching them together, I felt the absence of something that used to always be present, that familiar ache of not being enough. It had faded so gradually I hadn't noticed until it was nearly gone. Thanksgiving brought everyone together again, this time at my house. I cooked the turkey myself, only slightly overcooked, while Angela made sides and my mother baked pies from scratch. The kitchen was crowded and warm, filled with voices and laughter, and the occasional minor disaster that nobody took seriously. We were learning to be a family differently now, messier, louder, more honest. It suited us better than perfection ever had. On Thanksgiving night, after dishes were washed and children were sleeping, I stepped onto the back porch alone. The air was cold and sharp, the stars bright above the bare trees. I thought about the woman I had been a year ago, insecure, hungry for approval, carrying wounds I didn't know how to heal. She felt distant now, like a photograph of someone I used to know. I had become someone different, someone I was finally learning to love. The door opened behind me, and Angela stepped out, wrapping a blanket around both our shoulders. We stood together in comfortable silence, watching our breath form clouds in the cold air. She said she was glad I had sent that letter. Glad I had refused to let our family stay broken. I told her I was glad she had been brave enough to respond. Then we went inside together, back to the warmth and noise and imperfect love that had become, at last, exactly enough.